Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Marc, Cordon, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast. All right, it's Marc Cordon here on the Golden Mike podcast with my friend, my buddy, my soul sister, Jazz Biancci. Jazz, we're just going freestyle today on this podcast, and then I'm going to name it afterwards. But you've been through quite the experience, not only in the past year, but probably in over your life. I'm taking notes here. I'm not even quite sure where to start, except for the fact that it's already a miracle that you're here, right?
It is totally a miracle that I'm here. Thank God for friends.
Yeah, and I met you about a year ago. From what I remember, you hated my guts because you thought I was a phony.
Wow, that's deep, brother. Those are
good.
your words. I hate no one.
It's all good. But we ended up doing an amazing program called Speakers Who Dare and got to know each other quite well. For those of you who have ever watched my live show, The Golden Mike, which is my persona, there was instantaneous connection there in terms of what we could talk about. And then all of a sudden, after Speakers Who Dare, you told me things were going down, and it ended up being in your brain.
Yeah, things happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So Speakers Who Dare was March 26th. Mm-hmm. I went away for a weekend beginning of April, and between April and May, I think I inhaled something because I remember taking something
legal
out on the street for a walk. I mean, the way I see it, I had my little coffee and my little tights on. I was going to the gym and early in the morning, walking down the street, mind my business. And, an invisible something came at me and I inhaled it. And I think it was probably from a construction site.
Okay.
And then I started getting headaches that turned into migraines, and thank God for my dear friend Stephanie, who I've also only known a year, who insisted that I go to urgent care, because had I not gone to urgent care when she told me to, and I never do anything anyone tells me to,
no, you don't.
Then I would not be sitting here with you today.
So shout out to Stephanie. What was it? What had happened?
They don't know. They don't know the what, where, why, or how. But I know that I was getting up early and going to the gym near my house, and that was unusual. Mm. And one morning, my body didn't reverberate. I mean, I'm an athlete, a dancer. I know my body. And I had gotten off the rebounder, and it just in like a movie show or someone's dizzy or someone gets hit and there's that reverb of their body.
Right.
That's what I experienced, and it wasn't correct. It wasn't correct, and I felt something in my nasal cavity, and I couldn't blow it out. And I remember taking off my shoes and really not knowing what to do or what had happened, but something had happened. And then from there, I started getting headaches and then migraines, and I had a brain abscess. And was in ICU 5 days. I went to urgent care. Urgent care rushed me to emergency downtown. Emergency downtown rushed me to emergency uptown because they didn't have the equipment. And I was in ICU, and gotta say, my friends, God bless every single one of them, rallied. Mm. My chosen family, my beautiful, beautiful chosen family, I love you so much, rallied around me. And that's what they discovered. I was in the hospital a month, and they released me on antibiotics, IV antibiotics, which, I'm tough, but I'm a delicate soul. I could never imagine giving myself antibiotics, but I had to figure it out, and it had only been a couple weeks, and my arm our healthcare system. One of my first nurses didn't tell me that I needed to flush her line, which is the line that she would use to come in and draw blood and do labs once a week. And I got a blood clot. Fortunately, got a blood clot because that put me back in ER. And from there, they discovered that the abscess had grown and that I needed emergency brain surgery. So I had that on July 18th. And then I had another surgery on August 1st to put in a shunt. And I was released yet again and had to do 5 hours a day for 2 months of IV antibiotics. And it was a walk through fire. And a walk through fire with divinity, because I don't know how I got up early some of those mornings to administer that, because I wasn't sleeping because I had a pretty intense schedule. And again, my friends started rotating in and helping me, pop those bubbles in my IV lines and watching over me so that I could sleep and wouldn't miss an alarm, and just holding me, like holding space, creating a container for me to make it through. And again, it's not always blood who comes through for you. In my case, I don't have blood. Mm-hmm. It's always been chosen family, and people are amazing. People are truly, truly amazing.
Now, Jazz, how close to death were you actually in this? And I mean, that's a subjective and objective way of putting it, but for you, how close to death were you?
Well, according to the people in my life, I was the shade of gray. I had no color. When I was put in ICU, my friend walked in. I still have the text. She's like, I saw you and I could see you fighting for your life. She's like, and I started to cry, and I thought, Jazz has any tears right now. She needs me to be strong.
And I mean, you're a person who, if anyone has followed Jazz throughout the years, throughout the journey, I mean, you're one tough person. I mean, you've been in the military, leading these masculinity talks, and very spiritual along the lines of being able to make meaning where a lot of people don't see places of making meaning. What sense were you making of it then?
Well, honestly, it was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. I felt so... I mean,
in retrospect?
In retrospect, and even during, because I don't believe that I understood the brevity of what was happening, because it was so big that I just had to surrender, really. I had to surrender to God. I had to surrender to the process. I had to trust the people around me that loved me. I had to trust the doctors who didn't know me. Mm-hmm. And I had to trust and walk my walk and my talk and trusting the divine, because, how do you process? Excuse me, miss, you have a brain abscess. One time we were sitting having salads, and they walked in, the team, the neuro team, and they said, excuse me, miss, we need you to stop eating your salad. And my friends looked up and I looked up. We looked at each other. You need to put your fork down and stop eating your salad. Because, if they're rushing you into surgery, you can't have anything in your stomach. So, yeah. And I had sent an email to my panel, my Conscious Masculinity panel, and they're all over the country. And I felt their energy move like a sonic boom across the land to hold me. So it was amazing, because I was floating in like this embryonic sack of love and prayers and light and intention for wellness and life.
It seems like that's something that if you've ever felt it, I'm assuming you rarely felt it.
Yeah, no, and until this experience, I had never felt it. And it sort of felt like, wow, I imagine this is what a baby feels like, coming into the world when everyone wants it. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's like being born. Oh, it's like being born. Oh, I didn't have that. So it was amazing to have that initiate my rebirth, if you will, into a new life.
And meaning you didn't have that by the fact that you were adopted?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or something else?
Well, I was adopted. Yeah. And yeah, my parents, both my parents were married to other people. They had an affair. So it wasn't, and they stayed married to other people. So, I mean, I can't imagine if I was married and my wife coming home pregnant with another man's baby, I mean, I imagined that I might make her life hell. And I met him, my father, my stepfather. I'm not really sure how my mom knew who my father was. And, he apologized for making her give me away, but she had free will. She wasn't a victim in that. She made choices. So, so no, it wasn't like, woohoo, bundle of joy is coming.
Right.
It's like, okay, here's a reminder of what happened.
So let's go back on the timeline a little bit, or let's go back up the timeline and talk about sort of this rebirth that you were going through. How are you looking at the world right now through fresh eyes?
Oh, it's very surreal.
How so?
There's a reason why we don't remember our past lives,
Is there?
Yeah, because it's very disorienting. It's like I remember who I was before this and how I saw the world through my eyes before this. And the event happens and I'm different. I see the world differently. My vision is literally different.
So how are you seeing the world through sort of these fresh eyes now?
Well, it's surreal.
How so?
I think there's a reason why we don't remember our past lives. It's very, it's disorienting to remember what was and remain present to what is and work with that in the moment without judgment or criticism.
Does it feel like a past life, you before the brain incident?
Yeah, it does. It's hard to explain to people what different is, but it's like, wow, it's really hard to explain. It's like the way I see the world, the way I process information, the way I understand time.
I would imagine that there are things that were important to you before this happened and things that maybe necessarily weren't important. What are some of those things?
Yeah, the things I wanted, the ego wants. Those things are not important. The way I thought, sometimes we think our wants are our needs, and they're really just a script from society, from our peers, from the fantasy of how we think life is supposed to unfold.
So even as a conscious architect, there was still things that you can look back on and be like, wow, there was like a script that I was even remotely following. Because when I think about conscious architecture, I think about the total identification of the script and the status quo as something illusionary.
I can only compare it to a Olympic athlete.
Okay.
Right? They train to run, let's say do pole vaulting or whatever, but there are things that still happen in practice that can throw them off an execution that they have done hundreds, if not thousands of times. And so as a conscious architect, I can always see everything. I can always see my blind spots. I can always see my hustle, my racket. I see a lot of it very, very well. But at the same time, when you are emotionally invested in an outcome, sometimes you don't know that you're emotionally invested in an outcome because somehow it transfers into getting it right or winning or being so spiritual, right? Sometimes you can be so committed to being spiritual that you miss the lessons, that you miss, I just want to be a good person, or I just want to rise above. And sometimes you spirit yourself out of reality.
Well, and I think for every person it's different. I cannot imagine, even as a neuroscience major, I can't imagine what it would be like to know that they're going to open your head up, right? They're literally going to go into your brain.
Yeah.
And what I do know is I don't think I would be the same person afterwards that I would be beforehand in the same way that you're saying. But I think to both you and I, since we're different, the things that would be important to me wouldn't necessarily be the things that are important to you, even though we would go through a similar experience. So I'm curious about like what specifically were the things that you either let go of or the things that you're beginning to embrace, and maybe embracing or letting go of and saying, holy shit, like I never thought that would be something that I would disassociate with or I would integrate into my life.
Well, there was a point that I was What fell away for me was my old relationship with my inner masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So masculine and feminine energies are just energies, they're not gender.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have both. And so I got to see my holographic projection of masculinity, which was pretty badass, strong, capable, fierce, and...
You mean you saw this in a vision, or you saw this as someone that you manifested into your life?
I saw this in the relationships that I manifested. I saw this.
Yeah.
I saw this in the choices of who I dated and the choices of who I did not date. And the masculine that I typically aligned with was a holographic projection of my own inner masculine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so being able to witness that and see how that reality was not aligned with my needs, but my wants and my survival, I had to accept and allow the death of that part of myself to allow for the recreation of the divine masculine within myself, which is the masculine that meets my needs, not my wants. It's like, it's great to be with someone who can throw you over their shoulder and get you out of whatever, but...
That's how I make my choices. Is someone who can throw me over their shoulder.
Well, it's subconscious, right?
That's my divine feminine. Yeah,
right. It's subconscious. It's subconscious sometimes what we're projecting out, and we think it's the masculine, or we think it's, in a man's case, if a feminine is the object of the feminine. And really it's a projection of what's inside of us. It's like I've been in plenty of situations where I've had to quote unquote man up, which is, I hate that term. Yeah. That needs to go. And handle business, because that's what you do as a single woman, especially in a big city. You learn how to make shit happen. You learn how to utilize your masculine energy for your benefit. But sometimes you can get stuck in that place and wonder why, perhaps relationships are not working out, when really it's a projection of your wants and yourself, of your energies. But that's not really the kind of mate you need, because that energy is already in you, and maybe that energy needs to be healed.
Right.
So it's not just about the divine masculine healing as it relates to gender. It's about healing the divine masculine within oneself as a woman, or divine feminine in oneself as a man, so that there's integration and wholeness within. So there's wholeness and integration without. As above, so below, as, within, as without. So it's like everything is a projection. We're projecting constantly. And so if there's a glitch or something that is not working in the external, while we may know to check ourselves, it's either a mirror or a bridge. Sometimes it takes extreme situations for us to be hit over the head and cracked open to see, oh, I am creating this experience, and it's showing me what I need to heal within me, because life is a movement towards our wholeness, right? Life is happening for us, not to us.
Yeah.
So if it's happening for us and the universe is conspiring in our favor, which it is, we have to pay attention. And that's not always easy. It's not like we have all the time in the day to luxuriate in introspection. But when the universe or God or source tells you to sit down with IVs in your arms, and you're more or less rendered to your bed in your home or your situation and circumstances, it behooves one to pay attention to what is happening. And for me, the blessing was having, I remember there was a time when I didn't know a single conscious man. And then I met one, my friend David Mailer, and he does Men on Fire. And he was like this sage whose feet I sat at and observed. And I'm like, okay, if there's one conscious, good human in masculine form in this world, then there has to be more. And if I exist, they have to exist. And then I started calling them in, knowingly and unknowingly. And now I feel like I'm surrounded by conscious men. So as my friends cycled in to take care of me, I got to experience how I felt, how I really felt in their presence. Actually, let me choose a different word. It's not how I felt. It's the sensations I experienced. Sensations of calm, sensations of safety, And I had some really interesting conversations about my will and being able to, in moments when I didn't need to use my will, someone was there to help me. Let myself be helped.
And it sounds like that's something that in the past you kind of went with the rugged individualistic approach where you wouldn't allow people to help you?
Well, I thought it was weak, and I thought, my experience was that people disappointed you. That was my experience from childhood and into young adulthood. But I didn't know I was contributing to that reality out in the world. I wasn't aware. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I hadn't done my work to heal the things that needed healing within me, nor did I have the awareness or consciousness at the time. So my reality reflected my consciousness. And as my consciousness expanded and I began to evolve, I started having different experiences in the world. So this could not have happened any other way. The level that I'm at now, the things that are important to me now, the awareness of my needs and that they are more important than my wants and my fantasies, and accepting the moral of the story. I think one of the morals of the story is to accept people as they are. People are who they are. They don't need to change to please us. They don't need to fix themselves unless it is not working for them.
Right.
If who they are is not working for them in their life, that is their journey, and it is also their journey to figure out what they need to heal or self-correct or whatever they need to do. It's not for me to say, you need to da-da-da-da-da. It's not my journey.
Even though you just told me, you just looked at a tissue saying, you need to take that tissue, Cordon.
Well, do you want poison in your body? Or do you want poison out of your body? You get to choose. And as your friend and someone who stands at your side,
and doesn't want snot all over your desk,
I get to draw your attention to, hey, you have an option.
Right.
That's all I can do for anyone is offer you the option.
Right.
Hey, it's Marc. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode.
Well, Jazz, I'm interested in more of your points of view. Like for example, who are we to interfere with certain things, right?
Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard not to jump in the box with people, right?
Yeah. Especially when you love them.
Yeah, you'll run out of sage if you keep jumping in that box, right? And so I think one of the things that I'm most curious about, and you have just come from probably one of the most salient, and I'm not going to speak for you, but it could be looked at as a traumatic experience. My God, like to almost, to not know if you're going to be existing in the next month or so is pretty hardcore. Am I not getting that right?
I would say yes, and it was traumatic. You're spot on.
Okay.
Not being here was the least of the traumas.
So you weren't afraid of death?
No, I trusted God. I could feel the love surrounding me. Mm-hmm. It has been more traumatic for me to heal because the body records everything. So that I had a piece of my skull removed, and my precious little brain was like, what is happening?
Of course.
And so that healing process and my brain reacclimating to like, what was that?
Right.
And allowing the brain, its expression, its trauma, its tears, its screams, because the brain is encased in like a golden chalice.
Right.
That protects your eyes and your ears and that boundary was violated.
Yeah.
To save my life.
A golden chalice with cerebral fluid inside of it, right?
Yes. What I realized is I've been on this journey since I was conceived, because I'm doing now the things I did in my 20s with Kundalini yoga and chanting and meditation, and now I'm finding the science that backs that up, to put your body in a state of healing, to put your body in a state of restoration and relaxation. I mean, I had been driving the last 3.5 years with a clutch on. And so that was my contribution to the experience that I was destined to have, so that I could remember all these things that I had practiced. And the universe gave me a lab. It gave me a hospital lab where I got to observe interactions with doctors and nurses and how our healthcare system works. And I got a lab in my home and in my world amongst my friends of the things that I have cultivated. Life is always showing you who you are.
Right.
So we have an opportunity to self-correct or reinforce or change at any given moment. And so for me to experience the pure love and support and generosity, it's like maybe I didn't get certain things right, but wow, I got that right.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely hearing how much you were moved by the way that your chosen family had shown up for you and that you could feel that. Also, now that we're going into this science piece, I'm curious about, I mean, the brain is such an amazing thing. And we were talking about this the other night over dinner, like the brain and the mind. It's not just, I have a little cut on my wrist. Things were moved around, neural connections that had been built up for years were cut.
Yes.
In order to get to that, abscess.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I'm guessing it's not, I feel a little bit of pain in the back of my head. I could see almost the way that you perceive the world changing just because of those synaptic cuts. Now, we can't blame it on, or we can't straight up say it's because of these cuts or it's because of you. I've been practicing Kundalini yoga for all these years, and then all of a sudden it's one or the other. It doesn't sound like it's one or the other, but there's a certain healing going on in your brain that I love the way that you said it. The brain expresses itself in a certain way. And in terms of the expression that your brain has been showing, maybe in the form of your mind, right? How has that changed?
Well, okay, so there's brain, that's the matter. There's mind, which, scientists still trying to figure out what that is. And then there's consciousness, right? So my consciousness is like, yeah, we should be doing this now. We should be there. We don't want to get left behind. Keep up, Jay. That's what I call myself. Keep up. And my consciousness was the witness to the experience. My consciousness didn't go through the surgery.
Right.
My brain did. And my mind, the circuitry, one of my doctors said to me, and I wasn't sure if I was mortified in that moment or not, because I still think about it. He's like, do you know how, because my abscess was in the center, nuzzled in on the center of my brain. And he's like, do you know how you get to the center of your brain? Pretty daunting. And I was like, no, why don't you tell me? And he's like, you have to go through the parts of the brain that you don't use. I was under the impression that we used all of our brain. Mm-hmm. So my brilliant neurosurgeon was able to use the remote control to drive through my brain without damaging any other parts, to pick out parts that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So there are...
And that was right by the pineal gland, right?
The thymus, thymus. The pineal.
The thymus, the pineal. You should have asked him to activate that shit. Like,
I don't think he needed to activate it because I was in that bed and I was traveling my ass off. I don't know if I can say that on air, but the things I saw and experienced traveling through those secretions was just, I wish I could have the ability to draw, but I have the ability to write, so I do my best to write about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was, God bless the pineal gland. So the consciousness to go through it, and it's like, that's the part that can be like, come on, let's go. We should be doing this. They're doing that. Let's do this. But my brain is laying new tracks, if you will.
It's totally laying new tracks.
And I can feel the new connections. I can feel the bridges being made that weren't there before. And it's a surreal feeling to have these sensations in your brain and have to make a choice to remain calm and know that the brain is doing what the brain is doing instead of going to fear and, can I get another MRI? Can I get another CAT scan? It's like you have to walk in faith when you're in this process of healing. And through the process of healing, whatever is healing, whether it's a broken leg or your, colon or your brain, that organ is going to go through its emotional cycle.
Right.
We don't think of organs as having emotional cycles, but they're a part of us and everything is connected. So in the moments that I may feel fear, I have to realize that I am not that fear. I am safe, and my brain had some trauma.
Yeah.
It was exposed. It had never been exposed before.
Right.
God willing, it will never be exposed again. And in that moment,
cover it up, right? Jay. Just
have some decency.
Have some decency. Come on, Jay.
And so allowing that, whether it's tears or breath, to soothe the experience of that organ and the emotion without thinking I am that emotion or I am that fear. And, the mind wants to make sense of things. It's orderly and analytical and logical, and life is illogical. Love is illogical. There are more things that don't make sense that do. Mm-hmm. But because we're like in 3D, there's like this formula for 3D. It has to be matter for it to be real. It has to be solid. But consciousness, thoughts, ideas, dreams are all invisible. And they're things that we reach and connect to in 5D and pull in to then make matter.
Right.
So there's an energy and an intelligence at work in all healing. And it's a matter of not getting lost in, well, I should, I have all these like powders and tonics and mostly plant-based that I take mostly. I love moringa. My brain loves moringa. And so it's like, well, I should do this amount of moringa shakes a day, and I should go get some celery juice, and I should do that. It's like,
oh my gosh, how much grass are you eating?
Oh my gosh, I am a cow. Okay, I am a cow. I'm a horse. I love the way plants make me feel.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And so I had to really pay attention to my diet, because sometimes if I have eggs are hormones. Hello, sperm. Egg, it's all hormones, or the hormone of fear, depending on how the animal dies, whether it was humanely killed or not. And so I have to really listen to my body to see if I want that, because I was having a lot of really intense emotional experiences in the beginning of this healing, being on 5 hours of antibiotics a day. And I had to think to myself, okay, so how can I work with this and not contribute to it? So I took eggs out for a good while, and that helped. That helped me to remain in grace and centered. But it's learning to be in relationship with your body and with the sensations in your body and with life and God. And everyone has something to teach you. Everyone. One of my friends has an autistic son, and I was staying with her. And when he's tired, he puts his pajamas on and goes to bed. He's maybe 13, but he listens to his body. And I was, thank you, Guru. I will listen more too. And I started listening more and letting myself rest more I grew up in Vacation Bible School. I grew up going to church, and one of the luxuries that I had
and I can't see that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would skip church on some Sundays and like use my offering to buy candy. Sorry, God.
God's laughing.
Yeah.
God's like, I know.
And you're like, I was there. I saw you.
God's like, I love milk duds too.
And one of the luxuries I had was exploring different expressions of faith.
Yeah.
Catholicism, Judaism. And when I came to New York.
At what age was this?
Oh, throughout growing up. Yeah. And then when I moved to New York, I was like, there's so much available to study, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's Hinduism and there's, you know, Kabbalah and there's like all these expressions of faith. And so, wow, I lost my train of point. I got so lost in that. But learning to listen to the expression of divinity and the guidance that's constantly around us, and constantly, whether it's through a song or a stranger or one of my gurus, no, one of my teachers had said, you know, homeless people are like angels. Right? Angels walk among us. That our society has taught us to be so skeptical. I don't know if we would know a prophet or an angel if they bid us, because we're so logic, evidence, show me that you are a prophet driven. But there's these bits of wisdom. It's like every time I have change in my purse, I have a blanket and like toiletries by my door. So if I see a homeless person around my neighborhood, I can run home and get it and give it to them. You don't know who the angels are. You don't know who's there to give you an opportunity to be a better human.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. You have always had the agency and mission in you to make the people around you better in terms of consciousness, in terms of awareness. What does your joy revolution look like now that you've gone through this extreme? I mean, you were already doing things. You were already on a path, and maybe one that I would say that you would, if you were challenged, you would fight and say, nah, that's who I am and that's what I'm going to do. Has your revolution changed as a result of what you've been through?
That's a beautiful question, Marc. It's more about love than it's ever been. And it's really important to me that people understand their worth and their value, the value of who they are, not what they do, not what they have in their bank account, not who they know, not what designer they wear, what they can or can't afford. Everyone has an energetic signature. I mean, you've heard me say that before.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of times people don't show up or can't show up because they don't understand the value they bring to the table. They don't understand that their presence, just their presence, makes a difference. It adds a texture to everyone's life. So even if, you know, I know there are moments, I mean, I've had them, where our self-worth or self-value or self-love is tanked. And we don't think we have something to give. Our presence is enough. That we're breathing is enough. We don't need to jump through hoops. We don't need to, if I can't take 5 bottles of the best wine to this party, if I don't have something amazing to wear, if my thighs aren't this slim, if I don't have this to contribute financially, then I'm no good. I shouldn't go, or it's not going to be any fun, or it's bullshit.
And I mean, we're, you know, just to kind of pull the fourth wall back, we're sitting here in your space, and I'm looking around the room, and it's got plans all over the walls. It's got sticky notes here on the mirror. I'm looking into looking into the dining area, and I'm looking at things like acceptance and forgiveness, and then I'm looking at the other part of the walls, and I'm seeing. Oh, we've got a plan for 2020 written out on that wall there. And what does that look like for you now? You're seeing the world through new eyes. You're talking about, you know, like a real radical form of love, right?
Yeah.
And do we return back to I wouldn't even say that you had a singular mission before, but like, do we return back to the conscious masculinity piece and keep growing that? Is there something new that is calling you? Because you've always been operating off of callings.
Yeah.
And these intuitive hits. What do the intuitive hits and callings look like now?
I want everyone to know love. I mean, the level of love. If there is any doubt in anyone's mind that prayer is effective, I am here to tell you it is highly effective. There's science to back it up.
There is total science to back it up.
But I don't need the science because I lived it.
Yeah.
I floated in the prayers. I floated in the love. I floated in the light. And I want to say I love my men, my panel. They're not mine. But we have stood at each other's sides in many lifetimes. And I am so blessed to have my conscious masculinity panel and beyond that. So for me, I have these things on my wall that come through because I'm like, okay, so how do I help people get through challenging times, whether it's physical and their healing or out in the world? So I write down my process, I post about my process. I have a lot of really great ideas for 2020, and I was talking to one of my mentors the other day, like, I don't make too many plans, and that has driven some exes to drink. Okay.
So what is going on here? Because there's plans all over the damn place.
There are plans.
I'm even looking here. We've got plans everywhere.
Yeah, make plans and stay flexible. I channel what comes through and I put it there, so I have like markers and guidelines. But for me, it's a feeling. I know when there's convergence going on and allies coming together, I can feel it, and then it just plays out, and then I have what I need to then deliver. There are a couple of projects that I'm working on, and I don't talk about them because they're all in flow. So if something doesn't get done by Tuesday, it's not supposed to get done by Tuesday. There's a divine reason, a divine orchestration that it gets done in 2 months from now, because that's when it's needed. So it's a thin line. It's a line that I've struggled with, being a business. And I don't mean to make that sound, because it's so easy to get lost in the ego when you're doing a business and do what other people tell you to do or do what other people have done. And yes, there's value in that. But we're not all built the same way. We don't all have the same quest or the same mission. And for me, it doesn't work. It throws me into separation.
I have two questions here. I think the first question is, how can a business be built without ego?
For me, part of my morning and part of my night is asking, my invisible arsenal to keep me aligned in divine attention, divine motivation, divine mind, divine thinking, divine sight, divine vision, divine words, divine action, divine body, divine voice, and to be in divine time and divine place with those who are in the same. And that is my mantra every morning and every night. And my relationship with God, Source, whatever name you want to pack on that, and my relationship with myself are 1 and 2. And then from there, I interact and check myself constantly.
Okay. And then I want to get back to this. You're talking about convergence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'd love some clarification from you, because when I think convergence, I'm thinking of the coming together and the building of collective energy.
Correct.
Or oneness. Correct. Right?
Yeah.
But then where I stop is it convergence for convergence sake, because things are returning to where the oneness it was before, or is there a convergence to build that energy up for what?
I don't know.
But you feel that there's a convergence happening.
Well, I feel there's been a convergence happening for several years. I've written about it, and there's the micro and the macro, right? So there's the convergence. I remember laying in bed, and my counsel was around me, And I was like, ladies, this is boot camp. This is not about me. I'm the one going through it. Maybe I'm the one going through it for our collective because I'm the strongest one to go through it, to go through this one thing. But we're all in training and we're all learning something from this experience that we're going to need later on a bigger scale. At one point we were talking and it's like, if we each took a state, we could turn it around, because the coherence. So
you're talking about becoming senators now?
Well, I don't know about all that, but there's something to coming together in love and bringing your gifts, because there were quite a few people moving on my behalf, and it's not like we had a meeting saying you do this and you do that. It was like sacred economics. And everyone brought their strengths and their gifts and contributed, and there was ease and flow and grace. And I'm alive, right, because of it.
So you felt the convergence even coming together when you were in dire straits.
In dire straits, and even before then, Mark, when I was choosing the panel for Conscious Masculinity. We don't always know why we're doing things. Most of the times, we have no idea why we're doing things, but we're being guided to do them. And so,
by what?
God, divinity, the plan, the soul contracts. And, one of my panelists, Jay Brown, I had observed him on social media for like 2 or 3 months. He would just come up in my feed. And I'm like, there's something about this. And so I knew I had wanted to work with him. I didn't know how. I had no idea. And then 2017, wow. It's almost 2020. The suicides of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, really, I felt it in the city as an impact. I felt the impact of those suicides. And I decided to do the panel. And him and Ludo Gabriel, Woke Daddy, totally on mission, had been on mission, saying some really powerful things. Dave Richardson and Spencer Jacobson was referred to me, and it was just like, yes. And through Spencer, I met Kevin, and then I found Richie Nelson, who's in Australia, and to be aligned with someone in another country so far away, in the same language, in the same mind. That's convergence. People coming together, that's family. Yeah. That's family. Ooh, I can feel my brain going. And so the lessons and the support that we've all given to each other, and specifically around being adopted, because my neurosurgeon is from Angola, Africa. All the things that had to happen from the time, maybe as a little boy, he decided he wanted to be a brain surgeon, and me, who was born in California, and went to high school in the Midwest, and then came to New York and tried to leave multiple times.
I hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as TheJoyRev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better? Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.